Good morning and welcome to It Just Means More Football and Coffee. He's Craig McMichael. I'm Rob Williams, and we're back with another Saturday morning edition. I hope that you have your cup of coffee. Craig, what's up? What's happening? What you drinking?
Well, in pure Detroit fashion, I've got my Michigan lacrosse shirt on, and I'm drinking a nice hot cup of Tim Hortons Canadian dark roast coffee.
This dude could not be any more Michigan right now. I pulled off the shelf the patriotic mug today on my bookshelf. Dude, it had this is crazy. This did not come from my house. This is not in my coffee mug cabinet. This is off my bookshelf in my office. And then when I pulled it off, because I was like, I need something different today,
Yeah.
there was a ghost pepper in it. So I was
Did
a
you
little
leave it in
afraid.
for the coffee? A little kick?
I didn't, but it's been in there. It's been in there for like a year because somebody brought it in and dared us to eat it. And they brought a bag. And all of them got eaten except for that one, and it got hidden in my mug. I guess somebody was hoping I was just going to pour coffee and go, but I found it. It was all shriveled, so I was a little afraid that my coffee was going to be spicy, but it's all good.
Did it
It's all
finally
good.
make the Maxwell House taste a little better?
Maxwell House took out the spicy. It conquers all. You know, at this point, Maxwell House should just sponsor us.
Nope. That ain't it. Get in the NIL game, Maxwell House, and then they
I think it would be great. I think it'd be great just to watch Craig drink Maxwell House coffee. All right. Enough talk about coffee and breakfast and all those things. Let's talk college football. So you tell me, we're at a point now where we're going to talk a little coaching. So
Yep.
SEC coaching news. Where are we headed today?
So big thing here, we're going to talk a little bit about we're going to do coaching grades. Obviously, we're going to look at some of those new hires, but I have to give you an alert on the Dogs. There is panic in Athens after a year of consistency and everyone singing Kumbaya. Georgia is experiencing what y'all are experiencing. The staff is in panic. It is in chaos. Within the last week, Scott Cochran has stepped down. He was their special teams coordinator, came over from Alabama in 2020. Brian McClendon, who had recently come over a couple of years ago as a wide receiver coach, also a dynamic recruiter. He's off to Tampa to go to the NFL. Apparently, he doesn't want to deal with any of that. And then this morning, this is where my heartstrings are kind of pulling both ways. It is rumored that running back coach Del McGee is headed to Atlanta to take over the best job in Atlanta. Sorry, Ramblin' Wreck. Georgia State Panthers may be hiring Del McGee as their new head coach, which I think is going to be great for Georgia State. Del McGee is a phenomenal recruiter. He was a legend within the Georgia high school football coaching ranks. But, what this probably means, group of 5, look out for your head coaches. Also, Shane Beamer, check out for your tight ends coach, because Kirby is going to be on the hunt for some new coaches and some new recruiters to come to Athens. So it's a little bit of changes coming on in Athens. I'll be previewing that a little bit more later this week in Last Word.
Yeah, a lot of stuff, a lot of movement. It's weird. There's movement. It's February, man. Why do we have coaching carousel in February? It's a little strange, but again, this is a place, because this nation is a place where college football never stops.
Nope.
And so it just keeps moving. There's always something happening. There's always something going on. And especially once you get below that head coaching level down to those assistant pieces, it's a free for all. And to be fair, what we've created with the transfer portal is that kids can just pick up and go whenever they want to pick up and go. And so much like there was the push and the argument and the narrative that, well, coaches can go, coaches can leave, coaches can do whatever, so we need to free these kids up. Well, for one, coaches have buyouts, which is a whole nother argument that kids don't have, students don't have, athletes don't have. But now we have athletes hitting the portal 365 days a year, whether it's an open portal window or not. They're still saying, all right, I'm out and I'm going to get in the portal when it comes about. I've seen guys week 2 lose their starting job during the season and just sit the rest of the year, save their eligibility, and go in the portal when it opens in December. So now we have coaches willy-nilly.
Speaking of the Michigan connection, did you see what happened this week? Alabama got a new safety from Michigan. 6 weeks into the semester, apparently he can start at Alabama. He can go to class. Just check in with prof. Hey, prof, what I missed? Can I grab the notes from somebody? But yeah, he's now at Alabama. But here is the best part. On three, the new sexy thing in college football news reporting, their source was Alabama's NIL. Yeah, Alabama from Aaron Suttles. They're the ones that dropped that this kid's coming in. So like on three, like you can go there. It's got a lot of flashy content. It's got some nice graphics, but that intermixing of NIL, there's not going to be a lot of unbiased media coverage. That's why you got to come over to Last Word. We'll set you straight.
That's a good point. And I think that, we do try to look at things objectively, especially looking across the league. And we'll see coming up in the next few weeks how you and I do looking at things objectively. But I think we can look objectively today. As you mentioned before, we're looking at some coaching grades and really looking at new hires. And so today later on, we're going to have an interview with our guy, Russ Stanton, who covers Mississippi State at Last Word. And so we look at Jeff Lebby, and full disclosure, we've already recorded the interview with Russ. So we kind of know, as we're sitting here talking to you, we know what he's going to say. But for me, there's that Bryles connection that I can't get away from. And yeah, there's some negative connotation there. And I think it brings a lot. It brings in some baggage for sure. But can he break away? This is his first head coaching job. Can he break away? Can he create his own narrative? Can he create his own story? Can he be his own man? Still to be seen. How do you feel just off the rip, though, about the hire in general? So let's take Art Briles out of the scenario and let's just look at it on the field. What are your thoughts on Lebby and Starkville?
To me, it's like a C minus. Like, so you last year you brought in Arnett, unproven head coach, was just a coordinator, and then you ousted him after a year. You bring in Lebby, who was probably on his way out with Oklahoma. Again, you got to bring in the Bryles connection. Listen later on. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I think Lebby was already looking for a job, but if you're Mississippi State, you wanted a differentiator. So you kind of got that a little bit with Lebby, but Lane's already running the veer and shoot. Heupel's running the veer and shoot. Folks are already kind of running this. My question is, where's the air raid guy? Where is that guy? Garrett Riley sitting there in Clemson, just kind of rotting away on Dabo's staff, not being able to install his offense. If you're going to hire a first-time offensive coordinator, bring in Riley, a guy who's been to the national championship.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously can't speak.
This guy's going to help the Gamecocks, by the way.
I can't speak on Clemson a lot because we just said we were going to be unbiased. But
you can be. I'm not.
But I will say, it's still Dabo's offense there, so it makes a lot of sense to bring a guy like Garrett Riley in there. Yeah, I don't know. You're unproven is definitely the thing. For me, I look at Jeff Lebby, and he has a little bit of the guy who worked for the guy in him. He's with his father-in-law. He's with Heupel. He's with Kiffin. You have all of these kind of proven offensive minds, and how much of it is his system? And I get it. Like there's nothing really new, right? So everybody's pulling stuff from everywhere, and you're kind of piecemealing together what is quote unquote your system, and maybe you run the same system as this guy, but you have this tweak or whatever. But can you do it without somebody else being there? I think Oklahoma gives you a little bit of that look from last year because you're working for a defensive-minded head coach, and so really, I think Venable's objective was to say, all right, I'm the defensive guy. Let me run the defense. Let me bring in somebody who has experience with a prolific offense. You got it.
Yep.
From the outside looking in, that appears to be the logic. You've got the offense. Go run with it. And it's not like they were putrid or anything like that. I just don't know.
Yeah, but be honest, how exciting was Oklahoma's offense in the last 2 years? Like, what was Oklahoma? They were like 5-7, 6-7 year one. They may have won 8 games. I mean, like,
I can't wait to get into that discussion about them coming into SEC, and let's go ahead and tease that now because that's coming up in the next few weeks. Right. And I would have never said 5 years ago that Texas would be more ready than Oklahoma, but here we are. So, yeah, I just don't know. You cannot convince me that when he's working with Art Briles, that it's not Art Briles pulling strings. Can't convince me that when he's with Heupel, that Heupel's not pulling strings. We talked about this a little bit last week, right? Like Heupel's had some turnover at the offensive coordinator position, but he's still doing what he's doing. Like nobody blinks an eye when Tennessee's offensive coordinator bolts, because you know that Heupel's the one actually pulling those offensive strings, and nobody cares what's happening with Kiffin's offensive staff all the way through, because at the end of the day, Kiffin's going to be Kiffin. And so you just can't convince me that because he's been on staff with those guys that he now can go out and do it on his own. I get it. Like he's been successful. His first offensive coordinator job was at a lower level school. I think it was Southeastern or something like that. And so, you know, you got a couple of shots at it, but now head coach, you got a first-time defensive coordinator too. I'm going to bring this up with Russ, but Coleman Hutzler used to be on staff at South Carolina, most recently on staff at Alabama. By the way, Will Muschamp's South Carolina Gamecock staff completely populates the Georgia and Alabama staff. It's like 10 of the assistants are have been on those two staffs since Muschamp left Columbia, which tells me, back to your Brian McClendon news. This is ADD, but here we go. Back to your Brian McClendon news.
It fits. It tracks.
You said he's a great recruiter with the G on his chest. He's a great recruiter. That's helpful.
It helps. It helps.
When you have a script A or a big G, then that makes a difference. If you have a block C with a Gamecock on it, you got to have a little pizzazz. You got to have a little something extra.
Listen, Coley's going to do a great job as the new wide receiver coach at Georgia. Sorry.
Stop it. No, he's firmly planted. I like it. There is some smoke.
You owe me a coffee when that happens.
There is some smoke there with Coley, but we'll see what happens. For those of you who don't know, we're talking about James Coley on staff at South Carolina as the wide receivers coach, and rumored to be on the short list of coaches to replace McClendon in the same position at Georgia. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, he was a former Georgia wide receiver coach. Actually took over for Jim Chaney for a year. Did not go well. For him as the OC. Eventually went over to A&M. But the great thing about Coley, as I shared with Rob when South Carolina hired him, he has great South Florida ties. He is a fantastic recruiter. So again, that's what Kirby's looking for. Coaching is nice, recruiting is better. So that's why I like to poke at you a little bit, because that's what that's all about what Kirby's going to be bringing in. So,
well, the thing is, you have this, like, when we're looking at assistants, you just said it. Are we trying to develop? Are we trying to recruit guys who are already there?
What is your program? What is your program? South Carolina has to develop it a little bit more. It has to get in the portal.
There it is.
Georgia is going to be turnkey. Okay, you're either going to get the 5-star, or you're going to go in the portal and you're going to pluck somebody else's top talent and put them in. So it's all about
to tie it full circle.
Yep.
Jeff Lebby, Mississippi State, not turnkey. This is developmental.
No, but you got to do. But the problem is with Mississippi State, you got to do something different. Okay, like
100%.
You got to do something. The problem with Zach Arnett, he came in last year and he threw out the air raid. There was some stories after he got fired that he apparently convinced Will Rogers to stay and not go to the portal. Hey, we're going to run the air raid, and then all of a sudden he gets rid of the air raid. There was no differentiation. There was nothing going on. But here's the other problem, and this is something that we're going to talk about with Russ. Lane Kiffin is taking up all of the oxygen in the state of Mississippi. And since Lebby was hired, there was a lot of fanfare at the airport when he came in. He has kind of remained in that shadow now 3 months later.
It's radio silence.
Yeah. What is going to happen? So obviously you can tell. Apparently you said we should be objective. Obviously I'm not objective. I don't see that home run for Lebby. I'm hoping that Russ is going to be able to convince some folks. And listen, if you're angry about it, let us know why, because I'm trying to see it. I just don't see this grander the vision of where Lebby is going to be able to take even consideration of a playoff, to where we're not going to be in a coaching search again in another 2-3 years.
Yep, absolutely. So to that point, you gave it a C-.
I was generous. I gave it a C minus.
I'm
A gentleman.
gonna
We'll call it a gentleman's D. I used to call that when Mr. Michael was teaching. A gentleman's D. C minus.
I'm 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 gonna be slightly more optimistic. I'm gonna give it a B minus. I'm gonna give it a B minus just because I think that the offense works if he can do it without somebody else really pulling the strings, which is to be seen. So let's go ahead and hear from Russ, since we're not as optimistic as what maybe he's going to be. Just a fair warning: got a couple of technical difficulties, a couple of blips in there. Just hang in there. If it pauses on you, it's not your internet. So just hang on for like 3-4 seconds, and he's going to come right back in. So this is an interview with Russ Stanton talking Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State. All right, welcome back to It Just Means More Football and Coffee with Craig and Michael. I'm Rob Williams. We have with us our colleague here, Russ Stanton, who covers Mississippi State for Last Word on College Football. Russ, what's going on? How are you?
Hey, welcome. Thank you for having me today. I think we're just going through the winter and getting to the spring. Can't wait for March to start and see what Jeff Lebby has to offer.
What state are you currently in, Russ? Are you
I'm
in Mississippi?
I'm in Alabama. I'm about
Okay.
30 minutes north of Auburn.
Okay.
So you can imagine, of course, when State is playing Alabama, the Auburn fans are coming up to me, give them hell, you know, that kind of stuff. So that's the geographic, things that we go through here. So
yeah, we're just crossing our fingers and waiting for some warm weather. I'm in the Greenville, South Carolina area, so I'm about probably 3 hours or so, maybe 4 hours north of you. But
okay.
nothing like our Michigan man up there.
It was 57 yesterday in Detroit. I had no coat on. I had shorts and flip flops. So you take that. I will take my warm weather.
You can miss me with 57. Yeah. I want 90 degrees or nothing else. But anyway, this is not a weather podcast. Exactly. This is a college football podcast. So hey, Russ, brand new coach Jeff Lebby coming in. We have taken some time here this week to start looking at some of the new coaches across the SEC and really turned our focus to what's happening in Starkville. What do you feel like? What was the initial response to the hire from your perspective and just around the Mississippi State fan base?
Well, there was a lot of hoopla when he got hired, and Zach Selman, I think he came in just about the tail end of Mike Leach, had been at Oklahoma before. He knew Jeff Lebby, and I think Zach Selman and president are trying to form they're going to want to compete. So Mark Keenum, the president, is part of he's actually the chairman of the CFP, the college football playoffs. So he's wanting Mississippi State to compete. So the feeling is, and I think there's some apprehension among the fans, but they're excited apprehension that this may be something to get us to the promised land, as so to speak. The feeling in Starkville was, there was the band was there, they had fireworks and all that with the plane, and he didn't waste any time in decimating the entire staff that was there. So it was they kept the defensive line coach, for the life of me I can't think of his Chad Bumpus. They kept him. He's the wide receiver coach. He had Tulu Griffin and Xavier Thomas last year, so he did a great job. So those are the only two coaches he kept, and I think he's done a pretty good job in filling a lot of the open spots. The roster is also kind of filling out. It's a good feeling. And I think right now it's crickets in Starkville about football, because we got women's basketball is doing well, golf is doing well, and they just started baseball season, which you may know is a really big deal at Mississippi State. So
men's basketball, I think, just beat that team up north, I think, last night too, and I think Chris Beard commented that the Dogs were more physical than the Reds. So I know that that was exciting. Question on the Lebby hire. Leach was so iconic, and I have to be honest, Leach is one of my heroes. I got to go down to StarkVegas last year when Georgia played, and I got to tour the whole campus and really experience. I got to see Coach Leach's office. Or I'm sorry, that was 2 years ago now. Got to see Coach Leach's office. Was really popular. Were you surprised they didn't go with the Leach disciple, or maybe someone in the area? I know Lebby runs the Baylor offense, whatever we're calling that
The
now.
veer and shoot, they call
Veer,
it.
veer, veer and shoot. Okay, veer and
Right.
shoot. It, you know, are you surprised they didn't go back to that? Because I feel like obviously there was a miss there with Zach, and we can get into that in a minute. But were you surprised they didn't go back to, you know, one of Leach's lieutenants or anything like that?
Like an air, well, kind of, but it makes sense from where Zach Selman comes from.
Yep.
Right. I mean, he's part of the Selman brothers. He's the son of Dewey and the nephew of Lucius and what was the other guy? Anyway, okay, but the Selman brothers, famous Oklahoma, and he had I think they knew he's been in the top 5 offenses at Ole Miss and at Oklahoma, so it kind of made sense to bring him in. But here we are again, a new well, it's not just a new head coach, it's a new first time head coach, and I think based on the way he's doing things right now, I think that apprehension has gone away, and this offense is so wide spread out that you could do just about anything. But then they said that about Kevin Barbay's offense as well, right?
Yeah.
You know, the
Right.
pro style. The difference here is that he's also the roster has been updated to Blake Shapen, Baylor quarterback for the last 3 years. He's got 1 more year of eligibility. He's passed for over 5,500 yards. Bringing him in to run this offense as opposed to just trying to re-engineer with Will Rogers. I think that's a smart move. And he's also bringing in a lot of wide receivers and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think there was some surprise, but yeah, he even got rid of. There were 2 coaches that came with Leach from Washington State, and they're gone. So I think they're just starting from scratch, blank slate.
Was there anybody else on your mind at the point of cutting Arnett loose that you would have said, "Hey, this is a person that I would like to see them bring in," or was it always, you know, once you started to develop some sense of what direction they were going, was Lebby towards the top of the list?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was kind of under the covers. Nobody was really talking about Lebby. At the time, people were talking about Dan Mullen coming back, and then, you know, Gus Malzahn and a few of those heavyweights. Mullen obviously had an incredible run while he was at Mississippi State, but I'm not sure he was interested. He wasn't even interviewed, but I think the fan base was looking at Mullen coming back. So there were those, you know, and Lebby was out of left field, to be honest. You know, nobody was really looking at him.
What do you what, you know, thinking about Mullen, you know, Mullen had such a great success at Mississippi State, kind of punched above his weight. And I feel like that's one of the things, like he was a differentiator, right? He did a great job with Dak. You know, Leach did that as well. And I feel like Lebby can do that. He's coming in, you know, he's bringing in the veer and shoot. You know, one of my questions is, you got a big personality up in Oxford and Lane. You know, Lebby worked for that. You know, and Lane has done a pretty good job with what he's done with Ole Miss in the branding. What do you feel that Lebby has done to help compete with that, and, you know, really make StarkVegas, you know, differentiate itself from its brothers up north?
Well, one of the key things I think Lebby brings to the table is that he's been there. He knows what Kiffin does, his strategy, how he thinks, and all that kind of thing. So he brings that to the table. It's also kind of a fun thing going on between the 2 of them. I don't know if you saw the meme with with Lebby on Lane's back.
Yep.
And I carried you to this point. It's kind of what Kiffin is saying, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that familiarity with Mississippi, number 1, with recruiting, that kind of helps, because he was 2 years at Ole Miss and doing the recruiting in Ole Miss at Mississippi, and so he brings that to the table, and he also brings that familiarity. So we'll see this year, you know, in the Egg Bowl, a lot of hope among the fans for the Ole Miss game, which will be in Oxford this year. So.
Any feeling that because Lebby and Kiffin know each other so well, and there is kind of a friendly competition there, Does it water it down at all when it comes time for the Egg Bowl? Not on the part of the fans, but I just know looking at other rivalries across the league, sometimes when coaches are publicly friendly with each other, that's kind of a newer way of going about things. Whereas, 10, 20 years ago, you would have publicly taken a shot at the other school in your press conference, and that would have been the norm for some of these more heated rivalries. Do you feel like they're going to play nice? And if so, how is that going to be looked
Well, the
at by the
jury's out on
fans?
that. I think, I think he froze. Okay. Well, he froze a little bit there, but I think we're going to in for a fun time, to be honest. I think there's going to be some jabs in some of the press conferences coming up. The jury's out on that exactly, but how I think when Kiffin trolled Lebby just after he accepted the job, Lebby was kind of backed off, didn't make any comments other than, oh, that's just Lane being Lane, that kind of thing. So, but I think after he gets more comfortable in the position, we may see some sparks going on there and have a lot of fun with it. Nothing would make him or any of them MSU. We'll see.
So go ahead, Craig.
Yeah. So my thing is too, you got to bring the yin with the yang. Levy's father-in-law. You have to bring it up because his father-in-law is Art Briles, and there was a stink at Oklahoma this year because Art came on the sidelines for one of the games, and it seemed like there was a little bit of a spat between him and Joe Castiglione and Brett Venables about that. Do you see that? Is that's just going to be part of the? I think it's part of the deal with Lebby is what you get. He was on the Baylor staff when they had the issues. That's his father-in-law. Is there any sort of cloud or any sort of worry about what that looks like going forward? Because if he's on the sidelines as an OC, you're probably going to be on the sidelines in Starkville too. You wonder about that.
Well, I tell you, the Mississippi press has kind of stayed away from that topic. I mean,
Sure.
it really wasn't. I mean, it was mentioned, like maybe
Sure.
a small paragraph, and in some of the dealings there. And Zach Selman obviously was there when that incident happened, and Art Briles showed up in Oklahoma gear, and and the AD did not take it well.
No.
The Oklahoman newspaper actually said, "Good riddance." Lebby goes to Starkville with baggage in hand, and that was. So they said our headache is now Starkville's is state's headache.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that they're behind closed doors. Whatever agreement that Selman and Lebby had made, I think Lebby may have. It's his father-in-law. It's the grandfather to his kids, and that's what he brought up. And it's a hard position to be in. I would be a hard position for anybody to be in and try to walk that line.
Sure.
So it's there.
Yep.
So we'll see how it plays out. I know he kept the offense.
Yep.
It's Art Briles' offense, and he's still running it. So
lots of people are running it. I mean, that's been competing with the air raid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty commonplace these days.
It is
that you see this kind of offense running. And to be honest, I'm not familiar with it.
Sure.
I've taken a closer look. I'll look some of the video, looks at some Tennessee games. You can look at that.
Yep.
And then some of the Baylor games and kind of get familiar with it.
So you mentioned Selman. From a Gamecocks standpoint, I'll put my other coffee cup over that I was keeping out of view. From a Gamecock standpoint, I mean, I love Zach Selman simply because of his relationship with Shane Beamer. And obviously that stems some from Oklahoma, but also, they're very close friends. And so when Mississippi State played in Columbia this year, I know that the Selmans came and spent a lot of time with the Beamers. And so I have, I have kind of heard some press conference insider, stuff with Selman. And I think he's a great guy, and I think he's going to get the job done there. Russ has a great article on Last Word, kind of breaking down the staff changes. And I encourage you to go look at that. To see all the moves that Lebby has made. One thing that jumps off to me, Russ, is the hiring of Coleman Hutzler, who was an assistant over at Alabama, also previously a South Carolina staffer under Will Muschamp. And bringing him in to be the defensive coordinator, him kind of getting that shot to have his own defense and to kind of call that. I think it's a great opportunity for him. How do you feel about the staff overall? And when you were writing that piece a few weeks ago, which one jumps off the page to you the most as, newcomers on the staff?
Well, I think Hutzler is probably the most significant one out of the bunch. He's the linebacker coach at Alabama, and he's got some of the best. Well, Dallas Turner, he'd be going to the NFL this year, and some of the guys that are already in the NFL, he was their coach, right? And we got Stone Blanton coming from South Carolina. As a linebacker, because we lost Bookie Watson, and so they were the leading tacklers, both of them 2 years in a row. So the linebacker core, we need something there, but I think overall defensively, Matt Brock is out, Hutzler is in. I think that's the most significant change we have. I think Corey Bell, who comes out of FAU, and I think the significant thing about what Lebby is doing, he's bringing people from a lot of different areas, and the recruiting. Corey Bell has a big ties into Florida recruiting, and Hutzler, obviously Alabama, would bring some ties. So they bring that kind of good baggage to the game. And I think those are probably the best ones. We'll just have to see how the season plays out. I think he's put together a pretty decent staff. The thing that they're lacking in terms of roster, the secondary and the running backs, because we had to replace Woody Marks, who went on to the NFL, and several of the other one. Although they have a couple of guys, Seth Davis, who was a true freshman last year, made All SEC the All SEC freshman team. Preston and forgot the other guy, his name, but there are 3 coming back, and he actually took 22 signees on the first signing day, so we've got several good running backs in there that may show fruition. It's a big question mark that we'll find out in the spring what the team's going to be like.
So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I so kind of like a question of like, what does success look like? Arnett had that short leash. I think that was intentional, right? Like he had the intern, so he had an intern tag. It was a rough situation. Things didn't go well.
I think Zach Arnett got it was a raw deal, to be honest. And what are you supposed to do? You lose your coach suddenly.
Yep.
Step in, and you're now the head coach from being, the defensive coordinator, and you aren't prepared. I don't think he was prepared for that.
No.
Guys that make it from those coordinator positions up to head coach, they're groomed before that. I don't think he had been groomed.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what advice he got. I think in hindsight, changing the offense with Will Rogers, probably the worst thing they could have done. They probably should have stayed with the air raid, but hindsight is better.
Yep.
Basically, I think that we're gonna the success. What's going to mark a success?
Yeah.
I think have a decent, at least a 6 or 7 game winning season. The first season, go to a bowl. Let's get back on the track of going to a bowl game. Blake Shapen, who's already been running the same offense for 3 years, will make a huge difference in getting over that hump. First year coaches. Mike Leach only had 4 wins in his first season.
Yep.
So, you've got to build up from there. And I think he's getting a feel for it. I think all the moves that he's made up to this point, pretty positive. I think most everybody's pretty positive about it.
I know that you said, you would mark success with 6 or 7 wins. Is that your expectation? If you had, let me put you on the spot here.
Let's be realistic, okay? Go ahead, put me on the spot.
No, I was just going to say, in year 1 under Lebby, if you have to right now, in February, if you have to do a record prediction, which crazily enough, they're already coming out, right? People are starting to, FanDuel drops over-unders for the year. Now everybody's got their lists of how many wins is this team going to have or that team or whatever. And I'm starting to see those pop up on different podcasts. I think it's way too early, but just for the heck of it, if you had to put a record on it now, is it 5-7? Is it 6-6? What are you thinking?
I think it's going to be like 7-5. I do. I think I looked at the schedule. I have to look and see many of the non-conference games. Probably going to, wipe those out. It's the conference that we're looking at going to Texas next year as Texas,
right.
Oklahoma. So we're going to be playing in Austin. So it's those conference games are going to be the tough road to hoe, and that was the 1-6 this past year.
Yep.
So I don't think the fans are going to want that kind of pain again.
Yep.
So for me, there's a lot up in the air for a lot of these teams, and one of the things we're going to do in a few weeks is kind of tier the SEC teams. And for me, there's a big grouping of teams that lands in what I'm going to eventually call that seesaw middle tier. One or two things on either side can really tip the scales for some of these teams, and Mississippi State may very well fall in that category. Russ, tell us what you got coming up with Last Word. We want to make sure that everybody listening along is being pushed in your direction, because we want to make sure not only our people are fans of college football, but specifically we're talking a lot of SEC. And so for me as an SEC football fan, I want to be up on every single team in the league, because it is the best league in the country, and we want to know what's happening. So for what's happening with you at Last Word, what you got coming up this week?
Okay, I've got we had Mississippi State had 4 players invited to the combine this year. We had Bookie Watson, Tula Griffin, DeCameron Richardson, who's been off the radar. He actually hit the transfer portal last year and went to Ole Miss, of all things, and then decided to jump to the NFL. I think he got a lot of pressure on that one. And then Jaden Crumedy, defensive lineman, who's had about so that's an article I've got coming up. I'm also going to have an article just diving into, might become on the idea, maybe an opinion piece, but we'll see how it goes. The Selman Keenum vision for Mississippi State. What are they looking at? I mean, Selman came in there and he's just rebranded everything. It's now state. Everything's state. He changed the logo in the middle of the field, the logo on the helmets. It's all state. So it's all about branding with him. It's always, we've always called Mississippi State, but now it's kind of the primary one.
Right.
But I think Keenum wants to compete. I mean, he's tired of these losing seasons, and he wants to, and now with the expanded playoff, he expects Mississippi State to get there in some fashion. So that's one of the things. So I've got an article about the vision, and then I'm going to be looking at the roster. There's only like 1 or 2 open spots. This past signing day, it was like quiet. There was nothing. We only signed like 2 3-star players from within the state, because he had gotten 22 from the original signing day. So I'm going to do an evaluation of the roster, looking at all the players, what their strengths are, and coming up. So those are the 3 that I've got in the pipeline.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate you being here with us today, Russ. A lot of great stuff on Jeff Lebby and what's happening down in Starkville. You heard it here. He's got 3 articles coming up, so make sure that you check those things out and book it. 7-5 for the Bulldogs this year in Starkville. Thanks a lot, Russ.
All right.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Hail State.
We'll see you guys on the next one.
Okay. Take care.
Welcome back to It Just Means More Football and Coffee. Thanks again to Russ Stanton for a great talk on Mississippi State and the new head coach, Jeff Lebby. We're here with the Last Word. Craig, we just got to 12 teams in the college football playoff. Is it time to move it up again? What say you?
No, listen, this whole 14 crap, stop it. Listen, if you're going to expand it, just go to 16. Everybody plays and we're going. You know what? Or maybe let's just go to 12. But here's the deal. Whatever we do, bring this stuff on campus. We do not need these boring NFL stadiums. take Mercedes-Benz, whether it's the Atlanta variety or the New Orleans variety, leave it there. Give me the hedges. Give me Tiger Stadium. Give me William Bryce for a playoff. Enter Sandman, baby. Let's go. No, let's stay at 12. I think we've got the good number. We've got a good system. My thing, get rid of these bowl relationships. Let's go. Let's stay at home.
I completely agree. I mean, what makes college football? It's the tradition, it's the fans. And so when you do go to neutral sites, it just drains it. And we're seeing this is widely reported and widely known, but these neutral site season openers are fading out. There's not as much interest. It's not even as much of a moneymaker at this point anymore. And the networks are just moving away from it because we'd rather be in somebody's home stadium. Yep. And if you do a neutral site, then a lot of times you lose a home game. And you both lose it. So it doesn't benefit anybody really. So I agree. And I think 12 is good. Let's just pump the brakes. I agree that 14 is kind of a ridiculous thing. If we're going to make the jump, I wholeheartedly just go to 16. But oh my goodness, could we go past 16, Craig?
Leach talked about 64.
That would be insane.
Yeah, that would be insane. No, I think 16's your cap. I think that makes the most sense. But again,
your cap is controlled by the money.
Right. So but it's also going to be controlled by not being afraid of competing against the NFL. The NFL is going to be the NFL.
You'll never beat them.
You've leaned into the gambling, so just go with it. If you're going to go 16, whatever you're going to do, figure it out, differentiate yourself, and go for it. But yeah, I think 12 is a number. And I had I brought up that little piece. We talked about it last week, the college football calendar. One of my pieces last week, I broke that up, and I actually got it to where we could have a Rose Bowl game right around January 1st. Yeah, it's our championship game. I broke down the calendar, how it all works, so we're not extending it out into the middle of January like we do now.
Yep, I love it. So you got Georgia coaching madness on Last Word this week.
Yeah. We'll be clutching our pearls down here in Athens. Talking about the chaos and all the coaches being gone. I'll take a look at how Kirby has already filled some of those spots, and I'll look at what is being lost. I'm not really going to dive into those candidates because everyone's talking about who's the latest NFL player they're going to bring in. It's at the end of the day, Kirby's going to be looking for recruits. So yeah, I'll have that out. Check that out for probably Sunday or Monday morning.
By the time that this podcast gets out, I should have something already out there on Sean Elliott back in Columbia. One of my subtitles in there is hype and headbutts. And so if you want to get into the craziness and the energy and the intensity that is Sean Elliott, impact that can be seen on the South Carolina players and staff as early as spring practice. Word is that the energy in the building has already changed since he stepped back in. So excited to see what he does. Check that out on Last Word. Thanks for being here with us again today. Again, you can follow us on socials at McMicah7, at Rob Williams GCP on Instagram and X. Email us, secfootballandcoffee@gmail.com. If you have questions, comments, concerns, snide remarks, we would love to hear from you. Have a great Saturday. We'll see you next week.
Bring us some coffee, NIL.